Presented by Prize Picks. $100 match on your first deposit. Welcome to Light Years. Sam Spandiari here. We are on day 3 of free agency. More information is coming out about Klay Thompson's departure, about the failed Paul George trade, and I just want to talk about a little bit of everything on those fronts in addition to moves the Warriors can make. So let's start on Klay Thompson. If you haven't read it, I would encourage everyone to read Anthony Slater's piece on The Athletic this morning, kind of taking you behind the scenes on the Klay Thompson departure. I'm not going to go through all of it. A lot of it is stuff we've discussed on the show over the years. A lot of it's stuff that if you'd been watching all year, his bad body language, frustrations with being benched, generally his frustrations, in my opinion, with him not being able to play at the level he used to pre-injuries. That stuff's not particularly new or revelatory. This is also piggybacked on, you're seeing Steph and others post kind of farewell posts on social media for Klay. Whether the departure, whether it left a bad taste in your mouth, the way that he left, all that sort of stuff. As time subsides, I think pretty much every Warrior fan is going to be sad. He is a legend. He is going to get his jersey retired. He is a statue caliber player. And, it always sucks when a guy like that can't go out the way you want him to. He doesn't get the farewell tour tribute. He leaves in free agency to go to another team. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. But I wanted to focus on one specific aspect of Slater's reporting. And that was the approach the Warriors took. Slater actually talked about this on Light Years a week ago, and we weren't sure if Klay would return. Slater puts, controlling owner Joe Lacob led the front office effort to take a cold, more uncommunicative approach to Thompson's next contract in his 3 summers of extension eligibility, team sources say. Look, they nailed Klay's free agency. Like, that $24 million offer they made actually was above what he ended up signing for. Even if you believe that Klay had a larger offer from the Lakers than the one he took from the Mavs, that was still $20 a year. They came in at $24. I don't think it was really about the money for Klay. I think it was about the way that the Warriors were treating him more than anything, and specifically Joe Lacob, the owner. And to me, this whole thing is very worrisome, not because they were wrong in terms of the dollars and cents, but because they rubbed him the wrong way. And because, look, anyone who's been paying attention could tell you this, but now it's more and more obvious how involved ownership is in player personnel moves. To me, that's super worrisome. To me, this screams of Jerry Jones and the Cowboys as the way in which the Warriors are slowly trending, where Joe Lacob wants to be his own de facto GM. We saw Bob Myers leave last summer. There were people who constantly speculated he got tired of Lacob telling him what to do all the time and didn't let him run the team the way he wanted to. I keep thinking about that in context of everything here. Mike Dunleavy's the GM, but Mike's a first-time GM. He has very little leverage to tell ownership not to do something in the way that someone like Bob Myers might have, or, pick someone from another team, like someone like Sam Presti or Pat Riley, or one of these like very tenured, proven, I could get any job I want execs out there. I also wonder, does it get to this state with Klay Thompson if Bob's there? We all know Bob's a great relationship guy. And, this whole thing, it was about a relationship splintering. Did they miss Bob's soft touch? Bob to be the guy to go to Klay and his agent and be like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. The guy to tell Joe, we can't treat him this way. It's not going to look good for you. He's going to walk. Did they miss Bob on that front? I have a lot of issues with Bob's player personnel decisions, most notably his drafting. But Klay leaving in free agency does seem like the most obvious example of what the Warriors front office is missing in terms of Bob Myers' skill set, and that is the human touch. Lastly, on the subject, you could argue it is the correct basketball decision to let Klay walk. That's definitely in the realm of possibilities. By doing so, it did open up the full MLE. They were able to bring in DeAnthony Melton. Melton might be a better player than Klay in 2024, 2025. Different player, not a scorer, but might be more impactful one. Also, by moving him, they may have opened the option to make a bigger trade. Time will tell on all this stuff. But it's hard not to notice they could have used someone like Bob Myers here. And it's also hard not to notice Joe Lacob is more and more involved in player personnel every day. And that to me is far more worrisome than whatever happened with this one specific move. All right, now on to the new news updates we got on Kuminga and the Paul George trade that never was. So Ramona Shelburne from ESPN had an article today that's supposed to take you inside how Paul George ended up in Philly. And most of it was focused on Paul George's process and probably stuff that doesn't really interest you as a Warriors fan. But there was a little color provided with regards to the Warriors' pursuit of Paul George. And the part that sticks out with me is the acknowledgement that the Warriors offered multiple combinations of expiring contracts to young players, even offered an unprotected 2027 first-round pick, sources say, but the Clippers countered asking for prized youngster, Jonathan Kuminga. And the Warriors resisted because Kuminga is so important to their future, sources said, but also they worried George wouldn't be as interested in joining him if they gave up too much. So cutting away at that, basically the Warriors refused to put Kuminga on the table for Paul George. This directly contradicts what TK of The Athletic, famed Bay Area writer, put. TK didn't go into details of what exactly they offered, but he said, from what I heard, they offered some combination of Wiggins, CP, Kuminga, Moody, plus a first-round pick. The way he's framing it is they could have some, but not all of these together. So if you want Kuminga, you don't get a pick. If you want a pick, you probably don't get Kuminga, is the way I'm reading it. Don't know that 100% to be sure, but just being logical about it, that's kind of the way I'm seeing it. So why the conflict between the two? They're both reputable reporters. I have no reason to believe either of them are outright lying. I think it's about who you talk to. I think the Clippers, where I'm guessing Ramona's doing most of her reporting, are trying to say the Warriors never offered that dazzling package that made them that interested to do it. And maybe they're right. Maybe the Warriors didn't. The Warriors, on the other hand, want everyone to know we did put a serious offer on the table. And to me, this comes down to valuation. If I'm to read between the lines, here's how I'm reading it. The Warriors think Paul George is going to walk for nothing, and they shouldn't have to pay top dollar to the Clippers. And the Clippers were saying, we'd rather he walk for nothing than take your package. My guess is the Clippers didn't want to be in the second apron, which all the trades the Warriors would have proposed would have put them in. They were more comfortable letting him walk for free and not have to go into the second apron than take on contracts they didn't want to, such as Chris Paul's contract, such as maybe Andrew Wiggins' contract. Some of these things that kind of keep the Clippers in tax hell. And the only way they were going to go into second apron tax hell was if the Warriors made him an offer they couldn't refuse. And that's probably like Kuminga and a bunch of picks where they're like, okay, this limits us, but this is too good a bounty for us not to do it. I can get both sides of it. I mean, it's a little disappointing from the Warriors' perspective because I think even at the age of 34, Kuminga and a pick, I would have done that. I think there's probably a line at 2 or 3 picks where I'd be like, okay, chill out, Steve Ballmer. And maybe that was the Clippers' move all along. Maybe if the Warriors offered Kuminga and a pick, they would have said, we need 2 picks. If they offered 2 picks, they would have been like, we need 3. And they would have done it to see how much they could make the Warriors bleed because the Warriors are in-state rival. I mean, everyone here has been to seeing Clipper games. If you haven't been to one, it's more Warrior fans there than Clipper fans. I'm sure they're sensitive to that. It's not like you're trading with the Hornets cross country where you don't have to see this player. You trade Paul George to the Warriors, he's coming into your house. Everyone's wearing a Warrior jersey. It's a bad look. So part of me is somewhat sympathetic to the Warriors over this whole thing. Like, it would have been a lot easier to make this trade if Paul George was on the Indiana Pacers, for example, because they're out of conference. The other part of me, though, is like, man, it sucks because that would have been the perfect guy to replace Klay, to give Steph that running mate who's still in his prime as opposed to post-prime because of injuries that Klay was. And here we are with it, right? And taking it back to what we were talking about, I do wonder how much Joe Lacob's involved in this. I do wonder how much of this is Joe Lacob values Jonathan Kuminga higher than the trade market does. Again, maybe he's right to. Maybe he's right to overvalue him and protect him and not make a trade that makes him look like potentially a sucker in 2 years. But we're here, day 3 of free agency. As of right now, I don't know if the Warriors make the play-in next year. If this is the roster they're going forward with next year, they had another couple veteran minimums. They don't have enough offense to get it done, period. And they've had regular inaction in the trade market, regularly overvaluing their young players. Do you guys remember James Wiseman? Won't trade him for anyone other than Giannis or Embiid. And what do they end up trading him for? A bag of chips. And, GP2 coming back home, who's always injured. Is that what's going to happen with Kuminga, or will Kuminga take that huge leap? Again, I don't love the idea that Joe Lacob is more and more involved in player personnel. On aggregate, he's been an excellent owner. He spends, he's spent. He got a building built. He's done all the things you'd expect of an owner. They built a dynasty or everything. But if the end game from this is, okay, now I'm Jerry, now I'm the captain, now I'm the guy who's making all the trades, I don't like it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I do not love it as a direction. I've rarely ever seen it work in any other franchise. It feels so Dallas Cowboys to me. I just keep going back to that because it's like, think about Jerry Jones. No one would call the Cowboys cheap. Jerry's world is a shrine to Jerry. All that stuff's true, but also they haven't won since he took over. In some ways, it's very similar. He bought the team. They had a dynastic run with those 3 Super Bowls in 4 years with, Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, just a stacked roster. Very reminiscent of the Warriors, right? And Jerry Jones thought he had the magic touch, and Jimmy Johnson leaves and all these people leave. And, what have the Cowboys done since then? They're not a terrible team. They're not a laughing stock, but they are kind of a team who just gets the first round, and that's about it. Most of the next 30 years of the Jerry Jones era have been overspending and under-delivering. Is that where the Warriors are headed? Is that where the Warriors are headed under Joe Lacob? You tell me. All right, guys. Before we move on, I want to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. It's a good deal as far as I'm concerned. With the finals over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is still heating up with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. You could win 100 extra cash and watch them ball out. And then finally, you got the 4th of July hot dog eating contest coming up. Prize Picks will be providing a square for Jeffrey Esper to eat 1 hot dog. If he eats 1, you win. So it's pretty simple, guys. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LIGHTYEARS for your first deposit match up to $100. That's code LIGHTYEARS on Prize Picks for a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Light Years is also brought to you by Raycon. You may have heard me talk about Raycon's everyday earbuds before, but now is the best time to check them out because they just launched their upgrade model of the best-selling everyday earbuds. Available in a variety of vibrant new colors to complement each and all skin tones. Guys, I kept it simple. I went with the blue ones here to match my shirt. Honestly, I should probably get them out and put them on the next time I do a read. But alas, with the new quick change function, 10 minutes of charging yields 90 minutes of battery. Ergonomic design to comfortably fit the widest range of ears and optimize gel tips for cozy custom fit. Guys, go to buyraycon.com/lightears today and get 15% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 15% off your first order, free shipping at buyraycon.com/lightears. buyraycon.com/lightears. All right. Lastly, we didn't get to talk about this on yesterday's episode, but the Warriors did get something for helping facilitate the Klay Thompson Dallas move. They got a traded player exception and 2 second-round picks. So just a quick reminder, the way a traded player exception works is it's essentially a salary slot where another team can trade you a player into it for nothing. So you know how like in a normal trade, okay, we're going to trade GP2, he makes $9 million. Okay, you got to find another player who makes around $9 million, give or take. With the traded player exception, you're able to absorb a player's contract amount up to the top of the TPE without having to send anything back. The way it typically works is you give a pick. Most famously for the Warriors, they got a TPE from dumping Andre Iguodala in 2019 on the Memphis Grizzlies. They did that because they had to get under the apron to facilitate the D'Lo move, which led to the Wiggins and Kuminga move. And so anyway, that's your reminder. They used that TPE to acquire Kelly Oubre from the Phoenix Suns. The Oklahoma City Thunder. Oubre was sent to the Warriors for a protected first, which ultimately conveyed as a second-round pick. So it was a way for the Warriors to add talent to their roster without having to do salary matching. Ultimately, that one didn't work, but you guys get how it works. So with the Klay Thompson TPE, they could potentially add a $16 million player or up to $16 million to their roster, pending that team wants to move them. So just thinking about the options the Warriors have, I think realistically, you have to look at teams who are in kind of bad tax situations. So the idea of just dumping one of the guys who's not incredibly vital to them for a couple second round picks could potentially be advantageous to them. So who could that be? I mean, hard to say right now. Like the Boston Celtics have a gigantic tax bill, but just looking at their situation here, I don't think they really have anyone they're trying to get rid of. They're not going to give the Warriors Al Horford. All their main guys are above it. Peyton Pritchard. I mean, do Warriors really need Peyton Pritchard? You know, like that's a bad one. The Wolves are interesting because they have an incredibly expensive team and ownership situation where no one's really sure. The dream would be Warriors killer Naz Reid. I just can't see them doing it. I don't see why. Like, what is the gain for them to do that? You know, if anything, they're going to probably try to move Karl-Anthony Towns to save money. But, you know, they could potentially be like, hey, man, there's no way we can afford Kyle Anderson. So what if we sign and trade him and get a couple second-round picks for helping the Warriors out? I could see Kyle Anderson on the Warriors. And since the Warriors used the mid-level exception, they'd have no other means to get Kyle Anderson. So it's kind of like you help us get the player we want, and we give you a couple picks you can do something with later. So that's a potential one. Look in Portland. These two names really pop out to me. Robert Williams and Matisse Thybulle. Williams makes $12 million. Matisse makes $11 million. Portland dumps either of them for a TPE. They get under the tax line. I got to imagine getting under the tax matters to Portland because they're going to be terrible next year. No one wants to pay the tax to be terrible. And I'm not talking about Warriors playing terrible. I'm talking about 20-62 type of terrible. So maybe they want to move someone just to save some money and to get a future pick. The only problem is even though Robert Williams has been injured and the knees are problematic and all that sort of stuff, he's too good a player to not like they probably can get a first round pick for him, right? So that's where I'm saying I go like would you give up a first round pick to get Time Lord to be your center? On face value, I would, but then you look at the fact he played a whopping 6 games last year, 35 the year before, like, and there's serious injury concerns with him. So I don't know. That's a dicey one, but if they're willing to give up a first round pick, I bet they could get him. Matisse Thybulle, you know what the problem here is? Like, I would like Matisse Thybulle on the Warriors. He's a good wing defender. He could definitely help you in some capacity, but I need to know if Andrew Wiggins is going to be traded. If they have Wiggins and Kuminga and Moody on this roster, do they really need Thybulle? But if they end up using Wiggins or Kuminga or Moody in some like elaborate trade to get, let's say, Lauri Markkanen, then I'm like, oh, they need Thybulle. They need a defensive wing to throw in there. Like, in some ways, it's hard to decide what they need to do without knowing if they're going to make a big move or not. Because I'll use Portland as an example. If they got Lauri Markkanen, I think Thybulle is a player they would have to get because they'd want more wing defenders around him. If they don't get someone like Lauri Markkanen, I think Robert Williams is a perfect fit for them. They need a defensive center. He's a good player, pending medicals checking out, that sort of thing, And it's hard to determine which route they should go until we see what they do with the big trade. So I don't know. It's tough, but it is an interesting asset to have. It is a way for the Warriors to add a rotation piece on the cheap, pending how everything shakes out. I do believe there's going to be teams who are interested in just dumping contracts, and that's where the Warriors can be advantageous. So, keep your eye out on it. But I think all things come back to, are they going to make a big move? If they make a big move, it becomes so much easier to look at where you need to reinforce the rest of your team. The type of player I would target if they had Zach LaVine is completely different than the type of player I would target if they had Lauri Markkanen, who may be completely different than the type of player I would target if they decide to run it back with Steph and the kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are 3 wildly different scenarios, and it's almost impossible to make a determination on how they should build the roster without knowing where it lands. Anyway, that's it for me today. Appreciate everyone. Have a great evening.